I call to order the City Council business meeting. Let me try again with the microphone. I call to order the City Council business meeting for April the 8th, 2025. City Clerk Clark, can you call the roll, please?
Yes, Mayor. Councilmember O'Rear.
Here.
Councilmember Root.
Here.
Councilmember Williams.
Here.
Councilmember Roche.
Here.
Councilmember Pinkerton.
Here.
Councilmember Hutchings.
Here.
Mayor Shoemaker.
Here. Please rise as you are able and join in the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Each member received a copy of the minutes for the March 11th, 2025 meeting. Are there any corrections from council? Clerk Clark, I had one correction to those minutes, and if you'll give me just a moment to find that. Under item D, if you would add to the end of the, right there after motion carried, that council members O'Rear and Pinkerton voting no. We do usually record who voted in the opposition to motions. So item D, O'Rear and Pinkerton no. Are there any other corrections to the minutes? If there are no objections, the minutes will stand approved as amended. Number 5 is citizen comments. We have one person who has signed up this evening. Mr. Folk, if you would come to the microphone and state your name and address, and we will get you started on your timer.
Is this on? Yep, it is. My name is Rod Folk. I live at 18 Cloverfield Drive in Simpsonville. I just wanted to note a kind of an irony in today's agenda. Item C is the sale of the old City Hall. Item G is to increase the payment for a city leased parking lot. Maybe if the city kept the old City Hall and made use of its public parking spaces, they wouldn't need to pay more for the leased parking lot. Now, if you go down Northeast Main Street beyond College, be up beside the gun and pawn shop, there's a large vacant lot for sale. That would make a great parking lot. It's also bigger than the Verdin lot. Maybe the city could use the proceeds from the sale of the old City Hall to buy this vacant land and make it into a parking lot. Now, I know that people like to park 20 feet in front of where they are going to go shop, and this is a lot farther down the street. But most of the residents could use the exercise walking a few hundred more feet to go to the ice cream station or the restaurants in the entertainment district. With the new streetscape and lighting, walking this distance will be safer and help sober up the drunks before they get on our roads to drive home. Converting that property should be considered a serious suggestion, as it gives residents and visitors a good place to park, and it helps promote future businesses to that side of downtown. That's all. I'd like to leave this with her.
Thank you, Mr. Folk. If there are no objections from council, at the request of Councilmember Pinkerton, I'm going to move item B up to the beginning of the list. Are there any objections? So item 6B, second reading of Ordinance O-2025-02, amend O-2018-07. Mr. Pinkerton, would you summarize, please?
Yeah, Mayor and Council, I make a motion to approve the second reading of Ordinance 0-202520, amending 0-2018-07.
Second. I have a motion from Councilmember Pinkerton with a second from Councilmember O'Rear. Discussion? Hearing none, I'll call for the vote. All those in favor signify by saying yes.
Yes.
All opposed signify by saying no.
No.
That motion carries by a vote of 6-1, with Councilmember Hutchings voting no. Item 6A, Memorandum of Understanding for Redevelopment of City-Owned Property. Administrator Gracely, will you summarize, please?
Yes, thank you, Mayor and Council. This item is on the agenda based on the executive session that was held in February at the Committee of the Whole meeting, where you all were able to meet with the development group for the former City Hall property. There were some concerns about the number of units, less commercial space than City Council had hoped for, and it was my desire to have some document in front of Council to lay out the development type along with a timeline and how the developer intended to present this to the public. And so this MOU, while non-binding, it serves as a roadmap to what will eventually be a development agreement for Council to consider by ordinance.
Thank you. A motion is in order. Councilmember Roche.
Mayor, I move that Council approve Memorandum of Understanding for redevelopment of city-owned property.
Second.
A motion from Councilmember Roche with a second from Councilmember Root. Discussion? Councilmember Pinkerton.
Okay, Council, this Memorandum of Understanding, or the MOU, I'm going to call it, has many items I just can't agree with. Probably more that I'd rather see out than in. I won't mention them all, but among many things in here, it implies that the MOU leads to a development agreement which will be negotiated later. That's in the MOU, but we haven't gotten to a discussion on that yet. It reads as non-binding and notes a number of development agreements that the city shall undertake as part of future negotiated settlement, which is concerning. In the March 11th business meeting, we had the first reading of Ordinance 0-2025-03 authorizing the property sale contract. And again, it's part of tonight's agenda for the second reading. In that meeting, there was plenty of discussions and concerns about what we were actually agreeing to as far as a sales contract and what was going to be built there. Administrator Gracely mentioned that in that meeting that the developer would provide Council an MOU and or a development agreement to accompany the sales contract that would be binding to force the contract or the developer to basically develop what we envision and see and approve. I've got a real concern with the MOU as it stands. In fact, if given the opportunity when this ordinance comes up, I would move to postpone that ordinance, the sales agreement ordinance, until such time as we can agree to an MOU or a settlement or development agreement that has some teeth and we can get our arms around and agree to. This one, there's too many things in it, though it says non-binding, and in some places it says it is binding. It's a little confusing, and it ties the city into several things that we couldn't agree to in the MOU without a separate ordinance. So unless this MOU is completely scrapped, I would suggest that we postpone the sales agreement until the time we can come up with a new MOU or understanding.
Council?
I wouldn't make the motion until the other one comes up.
Councilmember Root. I'm sorry. Councilmember Root.
Could Councilmember Pinkerton be specific on which bullet points that he has issue with? I'll tell you why. I don't like the idea of scratching this all together. I think this written the correct way gives the city some, I don't want to use the word leverage, but it protects the city. I think if we resolve it or dissolve it, then we're back to square one where we were, and that's why we asked for it to begin with. So I would like to have this more specific and less. It says the Memorandum of Understanding, and it's very anything but understanding to me because it contradicts itself several times. Would the council member be specific to which ones that he would like to see amended, and maybe we could go from there? Or would this require tabling it and at some type of future meeting where we get together as a council and go through this line by line? I'm not sure what would be the better option.
Yielding the floor to me.
Yes, sir.
Councilmember Pinkerton.
I can't read it right here in front of me, but I know there's a comment in here somewhere that says that time is of the essence. That's a contractual term I don't see that we need in here. That's just one line item. That, if you don't understand it, it ties time schedules to a contract that can be used against you if you are in fault of a time issue. It's used a lot. I've seen it many times, but it's something I don't think we need in a MOU on what we're getting ready to build. Item 4, subject to the execution of a definitive application or agreement by the parties, the city shall support the Burdeck District redevelopment by providing a necessary financing for a proposed parking structure on the project and lease agreement for an adequate number of replacement spaces in the parking structure for the project. B, allow frontage on Head Street to be narrowed to allow additional parking along Head Street. And C, cause public improvements to be made along Main Street, College Street, and Head Street. And 5, in conjunction with 4A, the city and BRLH agreed to negotiate construction use and operation of shared surface parking and structured parking to support current and future usage in downtown. Now, that's a big one for me because it's even, again, it says non-binding, but if this is what we're going to, I don't think you could do any of these things without separate ordinance in agreement. Then the one that confused me the most, and I did ask some clarification on this, but it says notwithstanding herein to the contrary, this is number 8, with the exception of this paragraph 8, this MOU is non-binding. Then it goes through a whole litany of things that you would think was in 8 are binding, except for the fact that you get to a point where it says it's not binding. I think this whole paragraph could go away. So a lot of it's more what's in here that doesn't need to be in here than what's in here that does. Like here's what we intend to build, knowing that there would be parts and pieces of it that could be addressed. So I just personally, I cannot agree to this. It's written like a contract for the developer, and it non-binding or otherwise, ties the city into things that I don't think we could approve without a separate ordinance or some other agreement. Now, one thing that will have to happen, all of this, once approved, it's going to have to go to planning anyway, and then it's going to have to come to city council. So the part about, I'll say, scraps might not be the best word, but all that's got to take place anyway legally. So, in the one sense, it's like, okay, well, that's all well and good, but you got to do this anyway. But on the other hand, I would not vote at all in approving this memorandum based on the language that's in here. Does that answer your question?
Yes, thank you.
Council? Councilmember Roche.
Has our city attorney read through this MOU?
Councilor?
I have.
And do you find any contradictions there, finding non-binding?
It's non-binding. And the intent of it was to be a gesture of good faith on the part of the developer, saying this is what I intend to do. But everything is subject to a development agreement that is yet to be formed, which is going to be fully vetted and something that will come to you for approval.
Point of order. Could you get to the microphone a little bit?
Sorry. Did you hear everything I said? But this will be subject to a fully vetted development agreement that I would recommend, doesn't have to be approved by ordinance, but when you're dealing with a development agreement of this nature has substantial impact on the city, I would recommend you do it by ordinance. So the city is going to have in the future would have a development agreement they would have an opportunity to fully vet and then agree upon. But in terms of the MOU, it is non-binding on both parties. That is clear from the intent. It's just a matter, this is what I intend to do, this is what the city would intend to do, but none of that is binding.
Thank you. Given that it's non-binding, my opinion on the matter is I'm not sure why council should have to vote to approve or disapprove. I think if there was a vote, we could just all say whether or not we've read it and understand it. It's non-binding, so I could see it being an email, but I don't understand why we would need to vote to approve it if it's non-binding.
Councilmember O'Rear.
Yeah, I'll actually be short on this one. I found this document to be redundant when I first saw it. For what Councilmember Pinkerton and Roche have said, this is an unnecessary expenditure of energy when they still have to go through the Planning Commission, through the council, and what's already been stated. So I just find it to be redundant and don't think it's necessary at all.
Council? So I have one comment. It's more or less saying something very similar to what Councilmember Roche just said. The least binding thing of all is if we don't sign it. I think it talks about what their intentions are. I trust this developer to put together a great project. They've proven that with us in the past, and I believe that they will do that with this future project, but kind of indifferent to a non-binding MOU. I don't really know what it really accomplishes that you can't accomplish by saying, well, they gave us this showing us what they intend to do, and I believe them. So that's my 2 cents. Council, any further discussion? Councilmember Pinkerton?
Just one question. Maybe I didn't hear everybody's comment just now, but do we, and maybe this is addressed into council, do we need a resolution to pass this or fail it? Or can it be voted up and down as it is right now?
It can be voted up and down as it is now. If you're asking to approve this MOU, it's even though you don't have a resolution on paper in front of you that says resolution, I hereby approve this, it's still going to be approved by one reading, which makes it a resolution. So council either going to act by resolution or council. So since it's a one reading document, if you approve it, it's going to be approved by a resolution. And the document itself contains all of the terms that would explain why you're doing it. And so, when you have an ordinance or resolution that has a lot of whereas clauses and findings of fact, those can be very important if you want to establish a basis for why you're doing it. The document itself sets all that out. So the resolution would be just a formality, an actual written resolution.
So, and to the points I made earlier, since this is just an MOU and there's a pending development agreement coming, could the developer come back and say, you guys agreed to this in good faith? Is that problematic?
No, they couldn't come back against us. We couldn't go back against them.
I'm sorry, say?
It cuts both ways. It's non-binding on both parties. So this document could not be used by either party later on to say you didn't do what you said you're going to do.
Okay.
Councilmember Roop.
I can't approve it just with the verbiage in number 4.
Councilmember Roop, if you would pull your microphone to you, please.
I can't approve it. There's a lot of reasons why, but number 4 in itself is saying right there in black and white that we would be approving as a council that says that the city shall support the Burdette District redevelopment by providing necessary financing for proposed parking structure. So we're putting ourselves at risk by, if we decide not to do business with them in the future with this endeavor, they could say, well, you guys passed this, made it a legal, I mean, as far as us passing it, does it make it a legal binding that we're saying that we will do that? So that word concerns me in itself. I can't, if this dissolves, it dissolves, but I can't give it a thumbs up as the way it's written, just for that single sentence itself.
Council?
But again, Mr. Rubio, it is non-binding, period. So understand your concern, but it is clearly non-binding. I mean, you have a pending contract to sell this property, and they have the adjacent property, and that's coming up on the agenda. My understanding, the intent was to get something in front of you, council, on the part of the developer, saying this is what I intend to do. But beyond that, it has no legal implications for either party.
Any further discussion? On the motion to approve the Memorandum of Understanding for the redevelopment of city-owned property, all those in favor signify by saying yes.
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 All opposed signify by saying no.
No.
I believe I heard 2 yeses from Councilmember Williams and Councilmember Hutchings. Is that correct? So the balance of council voted no. That motion fails by a vote of 2 to 5. Item 6C, second reading of Ordinance O-2025-03, sale of city-owned property. City Administrator Gracely, will you summarize, please?
Yes, thank you, Mayor. This is to finalize the ordinance for the actual sale of the former City Hall site. It would allow me to set a closing date with the purchaser and finalize that sale. And nothing has changed since first reading.
Discussion? Oh, I'm sorry. A motion is in order. Do we have a motion? Councilmember Roche.
Mayor, I move that council approve the second reading of Ordinance O-2025-03, sale of city-owned property.
Second.
I have a motion from Councilmember Roche with a second from Councilmember Hutchings. Discussion? Councilmember Pinkerton.
Yes, Council, I move to table this ordinance 0-202503, sale of the city-owned property, to the next possible meeting where we could have an agreed upon development agreement.
Second.
So I have a motion from Councilmember Pinkerton with a second from Councilmember Roche to postpone this item to the next.
Mayor, that was Councilmember O'Rear.
Was it Councilmember O'Rear?
Oh, you did as well.
Well,
I'm
they
so
both
sorry.
said it at the same
okay.
time, and
I
picked
didn't
one.
hear Sherry.
I
Sorry.
picked one. So the motion is to postpone to the next meeting when we have a finalized development agreement available to discuss. Is that correct, Mr. Pinkerton?
Yes, sir.
Discussion on the motion to postpone. Councilmember Roche.
While I appreciate the Memorandum of Understanding, since it is non-binding, it's pretty much useless. I do appreciate the effort made, but I think what Mr. Pinkerton has suggested in postponing is good, because we would like to know that we are in agreement with the developer, and that they have Simpsonville's best interest, and that they deliver on a design that we've worked on together, and that all of council approves for the benefit of Simpsonville before we approve the sale.
Council? Counselor?
Question from Ms. Gracely. The developer, purchaser, in terms of the timing for closing under the contract, are you aware of a deadline they had to close on the property?
What has been expressed to me, and the reason for the MOU rather than a development agreement, is that until they have site-specific engineering work done, leading to a rezoning effort to innovative development, they are not inclined to do a development agreement at this point. The MOU was intended to provide, as I mentioned, a guidepost and, everyone's intentions, and of course, continuing to negotiate in good faith. But I don't think we're going to reach a development agreement until the property is sold, based on what they have expressed to me. There are just too many variables in that. They have to work out the financing, for instance. It's hard to work out the financing when you don't own the property. There are a lot of things that, typically a developer coming in and negotiating a development agreement with council, whether it's city property or private property, would need to actually own the property before they could proceed in that manner.
Administrator Gracely, kind of have a two-part or a connected two-part question here. At the time that Burdette Central was developed, it went through an ID rezoning.
Correct.
And did we have a development agreement in place between the developer and the city on that project?
We did not.
And this may be an Administrator Gracely question, or Mr. Hughes can answer this question. From a legal standpoint, and they have expressed their intent to go for ID rezoning, their process will be to be the applicant to the Planning Commission, which has a whole set of rules and procedures and things that they have to provide, engineering drawings, all that kind of stuff. Then they would have to own the property in order to be the applicant for that. And then that would go through the full Planning Commission process, go through our planning department. They would generate a recommendation and send it to council, which we would then see it at committee of the whole and first and second reading to approve or deny that ID application. That's a pretty extensive project, and I'm wondering at the end of that, after they have completed all of those hurdles that they would need to go through, including having very detailed drawings of what they intend to do, why we would even need a development agreement. So I'll throw that question out there for whichever one of you wants to answer that.
Well, the development agreement can have a lot more to it than just the matters of rezoning of a property. And so you're talking about, generally speaking, a pretty sophisticated document about how everything is going to work from start, point A to point B to the finish. And so that, P&P bonds, payment performance bonds, insurance requirements, timing, construction deadlines. There's a whole host of terms that can be laid out in a development agreement. So not more than just rezoning, planning commission approval, and this council approving the zoning or not. So the development agreement has a lot more to it, typically.
Okay.
Mayor, if I may answer as well. Two things to consider for council to think about. One, when the previous council approved the sale of the property, it was based on verbal commitments that were made in executive session, multiple executive sessions between council and this developer under the condition of confidentiality. There was no mention in the contract that a development agreement would be necessary in order to finalize the sale. So that's one consideration from a legal standpoint. Secondly, as I said, they're at a disadvantage here because they cannot put all of the terms of the development agreement together without having ownership of the property. It involves their financing for the development of the property. And no bank is going to talk to them if they're not the owner. Also, we would have done this 4 years ago. Well, it's about 3.5 years ago now, I think, had we been willing to move out of City Hall. But they patiently waited for us to have this facility constructed so that we could stay and not have to move twice or incur additional costs. So I would, point that out as well. And I just think there is in no universe where postponement would lead to a binding agreement at this point. I think, all of the players here have acted in good faith. We've seen what product they can deliver based on the Burdett Central development. They don't buy property to resell it. They bought the property next door. They're working diligently to get property from secured federal credit union. They are in the business of developing property. They are going to stick with it until they have a product that everybody can agree on. And I think that that's certainly achievable through a development agreement when the time comes for that. And furthermore, achievable through planning process, as you mentioned. So those would be my comments.
Thank you. Councilmember Roche.
Well, I can appreciate that I was a part of the executive sessions and discussions when this first came to us 3 years ago, and that no development agreements were required. The developer took the initiative to bring development agreements to us and show us their plans for the property. Not only that, they held a workshop that I believe Councilmember Hutchings was also a part of, and our planning department, and asked us, what do you need? What does Simpsonville need? Well, we needed parking. We needed more retail space. We wanted that, block of property to be developed in a certain way. And they listened to us, and they came back to us with a development, not a development agreement, but a plan, and showed us what the property could possibly look like. Then in the most recent executive session, they came to us with something completely different. And it didn't lean in favor of Simpsonville. They took away the parking that we were excited about, and they added more of what we didn't want and less of what we did want. And so while that wasn't required of them, part of the good faith was that we understand, we know what's going in there. And when it was changed, I think it caused a little bit of a trust issue for a couple of us that were privy to the first meetings. And now that precedent has been set, I understand that they want the sale approved. They want it to go through so that they can start their financing and they can start this project. The chances of us being able to, good faith is good faith until it's not good faith anymore. And so I consider this us representing the sellers in this real estate deal, this development deal. And we have to protect our own interest. I have nothing against these developers. I've seen their work. I've seen other things that they've developed. I think that they could do something spectacular for Simpsonville there. But so far, we have no solid agreement. And I feel like we're putting the horse before the cart as far as us as the sellers. I would like to see a development agreement first and then the sale. And the development agreement, while I know that there are things that can happen afterwards, that might need changes, we can approve those as they go on. There's no reason they can't come back to us and say, look, we wanted to put this here, but the engineer said that wouldn't work, or, we'd like to do this as retail instead of, whatever. They can come back to council and ask for special permission to change that agreement. It's not so binding that it's inflexible as we go forward. So I'm definitely leaning toward we need a development agreement and a solid plan that we as council agree is good for Simpsonville before we approve the sale of the property.
Council? On the motion to postpone to the next meeting possible where we have a...
I just want out one thing. There is no contingency in our current contract with the purchaser that is contingent upon a development agreement. Okay? So from a contractual standpoint, they have no obligation to the city to enter a development agreement before the sale that occurs. I just want to point that out. So it is if council moves to table and wants a development agreement before the sale, it's going to be a matter of contractual negotiations with the developer to get that done. And and they could say no. And I just want to let council be aware of that.
Okay. If I can make one comment regarding that legality. I've always looked at this Memorandum of Understanding and the passing this ordinance to sell as related but separate things. The things, it is related from a standpoint of what they presented to us back in 2021, definitely came to us with, this is what our thinking is on this, and we agreed to sell the property based on what that thinking was. When they came back at the first of the year, when we start trying to finalize the paperwork, in my mind, we sold the property in 2021. And the only reason that we did not go through with an ordinance at the time was because it was an advantage to the city to not go ahead and close the sale so that we didn't have to move out until this building was done. And that's a tremendous advantage to us. And so I guess I'm thinking from a legal standpoint that this is more or less, this ordinance, passing this ordinance is more or less doing the closing paperwork. That's really all we're doing, is we're required by state law to pass an ordinance to sell the property that we agreed to sell back in 2021. So postponing it, in my mind, really does not make sense to me. Like I say, I don't believe the things are connected. And I go back to they have this massive hurdle to get over of what we will approve as a council for their project. And we are going to get multiple shots at it through planning commission, and city council. We're going to get multiple shots. I have explained to them what my position. There are things in this MOU that I will not vote for, and I have told them bluntly, if you put that in the plans, you will not get my vote when it comes for ID rezoning. And I'm one vote. If the rest of council votes to approve that at that time, then I will support what council chooses to do. But they have understood that they have to get a majority of votes to get that ID rezoning, and they know that they have to please a majority of council in order to get that. So I feel like that's our safety valve on just going ahead and approving the sale. So I'm opposed to any postponement. Councilmember Ribb.
I have a question. The postponement of this, what exactly are we asking to be done during that postponement? Are we asking for newer plans? Here's where I stand in the whole thing. I was part of the original meeting. I wasn't part of the executive sessions back, but when I was first elected, what they proposed to us looked good. what they proposed to us a few months ago was completely different. We echoed that to them. They went back and showed us something again last week, and to me, I had trouble seeing what they did different. So I'm trying to figure out what Councilmember Pinkerton is what you're wanting, and I'm for tabling it. I'm trying to figure out what tabling it's going to do in the 2 weeks. What are you wanting to happen, and is that part of the tabling?
Can I just clarify a couple of points? One is it's not to the next meeting. It's to the next meeting when a development agreement is available to be considered. So that could be, however long that takes to get, it could be next meeting or it could be next year.
That was my question.
So, and the motion is to postpone the next meeting until the next meeting where a finalized development agreement is available. That's what we're discussing.
Is it wrong of this council, I think you know where I'm going with this, to want to see something more? I was a little disappointed with their last comeback, even more so than the one a few months ago, because they don't seem to change. They didn't seem to change much from the original plans that kind of shocked us. And I don't know if it's business with them. I get the business part. We're not doing it for business. We're doing it for our constituents. So if they're not going to be able to do what we want, then at this point, if they were to walk away, the city still owns the property. It's increased in value since then. I'm just playing all options here. If we're not going to be able to come to a conclusion where they're going to make money and do this, and we turn over the sale of the property, and then we can't get anywhere with them over the next year, then they're going to make the profits of that property, and we've lost out on some money. So I am for tabling it just because I want to see more. I haven't seen anything that I feel like we're too far away. I don't feel that we've got any closer in the last month, and that's why I have hesitation on this.
Thank you. Councilmember Pinkerton.
Yeah, I appreciate it's a complex issue, and I brought it up, and I've heard a lot of good comments here. One thing, and though I wasn't there, I do understand that there have been a number of changes to the proposed site, and the original council agreed to, and they're gone, or most of them anyway, and that proposal's gone too. And since then, we've had multiple changes. I don't think that it's necessarily, although it could be complex for them, that it requires a bank or other investors to get involved in what they want to put down on drawings and have us approve. I think we need to put the onus back on them to come back and give us something. The reason why I wanted to table it was a couple of reasons. One, it was advised to us that would be a good idea to do that in this meeting so that we got a binding kind of agreement, a binding agreement before we approve the sale. And though I appreciate it to be complex issues legally, this project has been postponed from a sales agreement 2 or 3 times. Am I correct? It's been postponed a few times. It's been pushed forward, and likely due to the fact that we hadn't closed on this property and moved in. All you have to do is look at the contract, attachment A. It spells out those dates that this thing's been moved out. If we, moving it out, whether we say it's in the next business meeting or whatever, I mean, I don't want to see it go on for another year. I don't think anybody does. I could certainly amend my suggestion to bring it back to the next business meeting, but I think we need to put the onus on the developer to get something out here which majority of council can approve. And I've heard a number of comments from councilmen that do not approve what's on the drawings now, and I certainly don't agree with the agreement, and have grave concerns about putting any language in an agreement that binds council to financial obligations that we can't foresee in the future.
Councilmember O'Rear.
Yeah, I echo what Councilmember Roop and Pinkerton had to say, and Councilmember O'Shea, I appreciate you bringing up the fact that the decision should be made for the best of the people of Simpsonville, not necessarily the best of the developer. And there was a lot of talk about, well, we did this with the developer. The developer may want this, or they may not like that. We're here to make decisions for the people of Simpsonville. And I think we need to table this and let them decide if they want to present a development agreement that we can all agree on. And if we can't, then we still own the property. Like Councilmember Pinkerton said, like you said, echoing Councilmember Pinkerton, put the onus on the developer to get something that the majority of us are going to like enough to say yes. It's not there yet, and I think we need to table this, hold off on the sale until we can figure it, at least get us most of the way there, if not all the way there.
Councilmember Hutchings.
I have a little problem with the language of tabling this until the developer comes back to us with a developmental agreement, because that could be forever. My opinion would be, if we're going to table it, we just table it. We don't have a specification in there that they have to come back to us with that agreement, although we have had several meetings lately, and they've changed the plan, and we feel like we're getting closer to what we want. But if we put that stipulation in there that we'll table it until they come back with a developmental agreement, and Ms. Gracely is saying that that's pretty much not going to happen until they own the property. Do you agree with that opinion?
Reiterate my point earlier, there is an existing binding contract on the city, okay? And we have an obligation to convey it to the developer pursuant to the terms of the contract. Now, whether or not, depending on the motion, whether in the passage of this ordinance, whether or not we can agree contractually otherwise is up with something we'll have to figure out. But I'm just saying, they can say no to the request to have a development agreement before they have a sale, before we have an obligation to convey them the property. Okay, we can go to bat with the developer to get this development agreement hammered out prior to a sale, but I can't guarantee that can happen either.
Councilmember Hutchings, you yield the floor?
What's that?
You yield the floor?
Yes.
Yes. Councilmember Roche.
What was the closing date on the most recent agreement?
I honestly don't have that in front of me, Ms. Roche. I'd have to verify that.
I believe we've had 3 amendments to the sales contract where we've pushed forward the date based on, this project not happening in the time we had originally planned. If I remember correctly, I think the date is May, sometime in May.
So we still have until whatever that date is in May. We are not pushed right this moment to approve this. And they know the date in May. And so if we're talking good faith, the onus should be on them, just like Councilmember Pinkerton said, to get to us if they'd like to meet that closing date. Otherwise, we don't. And if the closing date passes, the contract is null. We have to agree to extend it again, or we can start over. I don't think the city's in a position where we need to be afraid. I don't think the city's in a position to be strong-armed. And I think that needs to be said. I can appreciate pushing the closing date out. I can appreciate them allowing us to stay in our own building until this one was complete. But we didn't have to negotiate that far in advance either. We did that because I think we had a good relationship with that developer. That developer agreed to work with the city to give us something there that we wanted and needed. And that seems to kind of be falling apart at this point. I think the city should not be operating from a position that we feel like we have to follow through with this without a development agreement in place.
Councilmember Roche, the next business meeting will be May the 13th. So I don't know what that closing date would be that they would want to get to, but if they can't, I'm thinking in terms of trying to schedule a closing with real estate attorneys in the city and that kind of thing. It's pretty tight trying to get it through a council meeting, trying to get something that we agree to through a council meeting and try and get a closing scheduled in May.
We could call a special meeting if needed.
We could. Councilmember Williams.
So, as I understand that the contract that we have with the developer does not require a development agreement. They can't get a development agreement until the property is sold. And we want to table it until we can get a development agreement. I don't feel like that order really is going to work, because if they're not required to get one and they can't get one until the property's sold, then how are we going to get one before we approve the sale? But even if we approve the sale, and then come back with a development agreement, nothing's going to get passed unless we approve it anyway. So once they get the sale of the property and then they're able to get the full development agreement and then bring it to us, then we'll be able to see more progress on what they want to do, and they're not going to be able to move forward with anything unless we pass it anyway. So I don't see how postponing the sale of the property is going to have any benefit in the long run, or it's just going to have the same issue when it comes up again in May.
Councilmember Roche?
I think the operative word is can't. They've said that they won't, or they've given Administrator Gracely some idea that that's not going to happen, but I don't think it's that they can't, because they've already brought us 3 sets of plans. They can.
But sorry.
Councilmember Williams.
With the plans as being a non-binding agreement, with an official development agreement would be more of a binding agreement, correct? So this, they're just giving us an idea of, what they plan until the sale, and they can get something more final or official.
Councilmember Rube?
We should perhaps take the wording out, development agreement, and just show a good faith effort on their part that they're going to show us something that we've been asking for several months now. And I don't think we're getting any closer. And I think, like I said before, they got to make a certain amount of money. And if we're asking them to do things that's going to eat those profits, then it doesn't behoove them to do that. And developers have walked away from things that they're going to make money from. So development agreement is verbiage. Whether they got us one or not, I wanted to show more good faith on their part that we've listened to you the last few meetings and the several hours, and here's something that you guys can get behind. And that would be a good faith effort to say, all right, now we're on the same kind of playing field. The other thing I like about this is now that this opens up to the public, if I'm not mistaken, for them to see the actual plans. And I'm not a fan of executive sessions. I didn't make that law. I like to tell my constituents stuff, and besides, I'm always afraid I'm going to say something that where I said it. So this has been particularly tough for me, because I want to hear the public's feedback. I want them to see the plans and let us know what they think and see if we're asking the right questions. I understand closing dates, and I understand the headache of organizing all that. I'm not going to vote based on their closing dates. That's just the public knowing what it is, getting feedback from the public, making sure that they're listening to what we're saying, the feedback that we're giving, and I'm not seeing a lot of that on their end. If I start to see that by the next whatever meeting we decide, doesn't necessarily have to be a development agreement in my verbiage, if those are difficult to come by. I just want to see more of a good faith, and I also want to see the public look at these plans so we can get feedback in the time being.
I'll just reiterate what's been explained before, is that our original deal to sell the property didn't include any form of agreement to have a plan or development agreement as part of that. And so if we demand that from them before we close this sale, we're asking for something that we never asked for to begin with. And I understand that the plans have changed. I don't like that either. But again, we have all kinds of hurdles in place that they have to get over before they can do anything with the property. So again, I'm opposed to any further delay. Councilmember Roche, no? Councilmember O'Rear?
And I understand what Mr. Hughes said is, they can say no. Well, put them in that position, because in negotiation, if they flat refuse, just say, we're not going to do a development agreement. I think you know what kind of people we're going to be dealing with during the building part of this. If they just say, we're not going to do it, we got this contract from, 6 decades ago signed with y'all, and you're going to have to go pound sand now. We're in charge, because as soon as you sell the property, guess who's in charge? Not us. We've limited ourselves. We still own the property. We asked for a development agreement. If they flat refuse, which it sounds like they can, then we'll know who we're dealing with at that point. We'll know what we batted around good faith. There will be no good faith anymore if they do that. So I think we need to table this, get the development agreement, and let them get a development agreement. And if time is of the essence for them, they won't sit on it very long now, will they? So I don't think the city can lose in any way by tabling this. And that's who I represent, is the city. So I think we need to table this, have them draw up a development agreement, whether they want to, if they don't or do, and then make our decisions from there. But if they're not going to be a good partner to have if they flat refuse to do this, whether they're contractually bound to or not. Sometimes you ask people to do things out of good faith, and that's what we're doing here.
Council? On the motion to postpone to the next meeting, possible where a finalized development agreement is available, all those in favor signify by saying yes.
Yes.
All opposed signify by saying no.
No.
No. So 5 yeses and 2 noes.
4 and 3.
4-3. So we had 3 noes. So the council members voting no were Williams, Hutchings, and Mayor Shoemaker. That item is postponed. Item 6D, first reading of Z-2025-01, proposed rezoning of properties at 101, 103, and 16333 East College Street.
Point of order, I've got to excuse myself at this point.
If you'll hold just a moment, Ms. Carter. City Clerk Clark, would you have the record reflect that Councilmember Hutchings is being excused at 7:02 p.m.? Now, Ms. Carter, if you would summarize, please, and I will put up your presentation.
So as Mr. Derby presented us during committee, nothing's changed since then. We have 3 properties that are requested rezoning: 101, 103, 163, 33 on East College Street. Mayor, if you'll flip. So we have the map there of the 3 properties. Here's a visual of it. We have 2 commercial spaces on the front side. The smaller area connects the commercial spaces fronting College Street to a proposed renovation to make the mechanics garage 2 residential studio apartments. So the request is to change from business general to business urban, and we have some concept plans of the layouts. The smaller area in the top portion of the drawing you're looking at is the storage space that connects the commercial spaces to the residential. And if you'll show the facades, Mayor. So they do have several concept plans that show what the studio apartments will look like. They do intend commercial spaces to stay on the frontage, the 2 spaces on College Street. They do have parking for the studio apartments as well as the businesses. And they are represented here tonight so they can answer any questions you may have. Planning Commission did support unanimously, and planning staff did support and recommend the change from business general to business urban. The business urban would allow them to add the residential component to the business to the front, and so that is the reason for the rezoning and change.
Thank you, Ms. Carter. Nothing has changed since the last meeting. Is that correct?
Yes, sir.
Okay. Thank you. A motion is in order. Councilmember Pinkerton.
Yeah, Mayor and Council, I move to approve the first reading of Z-2025-01, proposed rezoning of properties at 101, 103, and 16333 East College Street.
Second.
I'm going to go with Councilmember Roche on the second there. There were about 4. So Councilmember Pinkerton made the motion with a second from Councilmember Roche. Discussion? Hearing no discussion, I will call for the vote. All those in favor signify by saying yes.
Yes.
All opposed signify by saying no. That motion carries by a vote of 6-0 and is unanimous of the remaining council members. Thank you, Ms. Carter. Appreciate it. Item 6E. First reading to revise Ordinance AXZ-2021-01, property at 215-231 Stenhouse Road. And Ms. Carter, if you will summarize again, please.
So this project was, the ordinance was originally approved in May of 2021 as an annexation for Stenhouse, which is a group of townhome apartments. We have put the project through construction and plan review and noticed that the city will be serving the sewer at this location and not Metro. The ordinance that was passed back in May of 21 does list Metro as being the sewer provider. The intergovernmental agreement was not in place at that time. It is in place and will be voted on. So we do need to eliminate item number 8 from the original ordinance, and the project will be served by the city of Simpsonville sewer and not Metro.
Thank you. Has anything changed since the?
And nothing has changed since committee presentation.
Thank you. A motion is in order. Councilmember O'Rear.
Mayor and Council, I move that we approve on first reading the revised ordinance AXZ-2021-01, the property at 215-231 Stenhouse Road.
Second.
Have a motion from Councilmember O'Rear with the second from Councilmember Root. Discussion? Hearing no discussion, I will call for the vote. All those in favor signify by saying yes. Yes. All opposed signify by saying no. That motion carries by a vote of 6-0. Item 6F, MetroConnects Intergovernmental Agreement. Administrator Gracely, will you summarize, please?
Yes, thank you, Mayor and Council. The purpose of this intergovernmental agreement is for the city to relinquish its sewer rights to serve Kemet due to the deteriorating line that is underneath I-385 that the city uses to convey that wastewater into REWAS system. MetroConnects is on the right side of the interstate in this situation and is the closest provider to upgrade the sewer for Kemet's use and potential expansion. As I mentioned at the last meeting, the city would be required to do about a $1.5 million sewer upgrade to continue to serve Kemet, and that is if we were able to get permission from SCDOT to bore under 385 to replace that line. This proposal would, as I mentioned, give Metro the authority to serve as the sewer provider, and the city's only commitment would be to then place flowable fill in that line to terminate it and then cap it on both ends. And nothing has changed since Committee of the Whole.
Thank you, Administrator Gracely. A motion is in order. Councilmember Pinkerton.
Yeah, Mayor and Council, I'll move to approve MetroConnects intergovernmental agreement.
Second.
I have a motion from Councilmember Pinkerton with a second from Councilmember Roche. Discussion? Councilmember O'Rear.
Yeah, I just want to, just for the record, put out here that this is a tremendous cost savings for the city. And it's just a great, I think, agreement for the city because it'd be a lot of money to do otherwise. So I appreciate this being done.
Any further discussion? On the motion to approve the MetroConnects intergovernmental agreement, all those in favor signify by saying yes.
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 All opposed signify by saying no. That motion carries by a vote of 6-0. Item 6G, parking lease for Verdin lots. Administrator Gracely, will you summarize for us, please?
Yes, thank you, Mayor. At Committee of the Whole, we discussed the desire of the property owners, which is the Verdin Trust, to increase the lease amount that we have been paying on lease for parking in that area, which is on the corner of West Curtis and Maple. We had been paying $650 a month, and they have rewritten the lease and are requesting $1,800 a month. Council's wishes at Committee of the Whole were to offer $1,000, which is $1,000 per month, which is the same amount that we pay to Temple Baptist to lease parking space from them. Temple has 54 stalls available. Verdin has 56. If we grind the stump from the tree that had to be removed on the Temple property, they would be exactly the same number of stalls. We could get 2 more parking stalls on the Temple property. So all things being equal, I think everyone is, unless you decide to change your mind tonight, still at approval of $1,000 per month. And, the attorney that I negotiated with after council's first discussion of this at Committee of the Whole indicated that the Verdin Trust would not approve anything other than an $1,800 a month lease. It is up to council to decide what you want to do, but I will say that my recommendation is to stick with that amount. And if we lose the parking, then I think the city has acted in good faith to continue to pay them a fair price monthly to lease that area. The city's done all of the improvements on the property. We take care of all the maintenance. There's absolutely no obligation on the part of the owner to do anything to continue to have that service parking. We've done all of that willingly without requesting any reimbursement from them for the improvements. So I think, as I mentioned, the size of the other lot is the same. And I don't see any reason for increasing this one. I think they're both strategically located. I don't think one location is better than the other. And it would possibly lead to Temple requesting a higher lease amount as well, which is problematic.
Thank you, Administrator Gracely. Members of council, I move to direct City Administrator Gracely to communicate to the owner that $1,000 per month is our best offer.
Second.
I have a motion from the mayor with a second from Councilmember Roche. Discussion? Councilmember Pinkerton.
Yeah, I appreciate you clarifying that. I wasn't quite sure that was your suggestion, $1,000 a month. But the owner has said that they're not interested in accepting that $1,000 a month?
That is what their attorney has conveyed to me. I haven't heard it directly from the owner, but I have to assume that, they're speaking through their attorney. I don't know. I mean, we've been trying to buy that property since before I came here. I have tried continually over the past 7 years to buy that property. I did make them an offer, of course, contingent on council approval to buy the property. It was a more than fair offer, probably more than market value, and they turned that down.
Okay. Last meeting that we brought this up, we offered that as an amendment to but they've not accepted it at this point.
Correct.
Flat zero. So So we're going back to the well again? I mean, what's the point? If they're not going to accept it, I would be a no on the whole thing. That's my opinion.
Committee of the whole was for discussion, and this would be council's official position. So I guess what I'm asking council is, what is your official position? Did you want to increase to get closer to what they're requesting? Did you want to stick with 1,000? That's something that council will have to decide, and then I'll convey that back to them. And,
But we didn't do that already?
I told the attorney what council was willing to pay based on discussion at committee of the whole, but that, we've not put that in writing yet.
Okay. I think I understand. But I would say if they don't accept it, then at that point, I would say we move forward and don't negotiate a lease again.
One thing I do want to point out that had to put some motion on the floor so that we could have discussion. So, and also I think that there are negotiations that happen when people say this is firm and we say we're firm, and if they came back with a counter that was closer to the 1,000, I think if they come back with a counter, she's obligated to bring it back to us no matter what that counter is. So, we also have the option to vote this motion down and we're done. I mean, their counter offer to our counter was our price is firm. And if we don't say anything to them, the negotiations are over. So it's our option as a council to go whichever way we want to go. Councilmember Root?
Does it matter?
Yeah. Councilmember O'Rear.
Yeah, and Mayor, I understand the sentiment of the motion and don't necessarily disagree, but I don't, going back and offering the same thing a second time, I don't think it's going to be productive at all. I couldn't imagine why they would just roll over all of a sudden. I'll be honest with you. I've parked in that lot before. I'm surprised they've gotten past ADA guidelines and things. I've never seen a handicap spot, and the thing certainly in wheelchair accessible, not with the gravel and dirt in there. But I just can't. I get your motion, but I can't imagine them coming back magically saying yes now when they've already said no to 1,000. And I think that's a more than fair offer. So I would just say, we say no to the motion, vote on, and then vote it down.
Councilmember Rube?
I was going to ask, is there, if this were not to pass and they closed the lot, I'm sure they're going to put some type of barriers up so people can't park there. I know Simpsonville First Baptist have been more than gracious. I can't speak enough for what they truly have done to partner with the city, and they've offered free parking there. Now, I know it's a block and a half away, but could there be signage that we put out as a city to offer, we know this is closed. I'm not really concerned with the repercussion of people thinking council closed that. It's private property. If they think that we closed it, they closed it. But to divert that traffic and give them another option, because we can't make up parking. I'm not for paying $1,800, but we also are going to lose 50-some parking spots. And particularly, I think it's only going to affect us if you would agree on a Friday and Saturday, I would think. Mostly that lot's empty. Is there a place where we could put signage to direct traffic to maybe Simpsonville First Baptist, as they've been gracious?
So 2 concerns there. I would need to talk to First Baptist first and see if they were amenable to us advertising their property as public parking.
Right.
They are generous and they allow the public to park there. They don't go out and look to see if it's a church member. They share the overflow parking across the street with this complex, particularly for court when we need it. That would be a concern, is whether or not they would allow us to do that. 2, we are going to be putting wayfinding signage, but not until after the downtown project is completed.
Yeah.
We could put some sort of sign out there, that redirects people if First Baptist is amenable, but I don't know how I would ask that question of them, because they have been so gracious. I don't want to push it too much and
Right.
start directing And I don't know that will satisfy the public because it's still further than that lot would be for all of those businesses in there. One thing I failed to mention that I did want to say to you all, the distinction between the two properties is that Temple, of course, is a church, so it's non-taxable. The Verdin Trust is paying taxes on that property. The attorney had originally asked for $1,800 plus for the city to pay the taxes. And I told him in no uncertain terms we would not directly pay their tax burden for them, that's just not a feasible thing to ask us to do. If council wants to increase the offer my recommendation would be maybe $1,100. That generates another $1,200 a year for them, which would cover their tax burden, because it's undeveloped property. So, the valuation of it is much lower than it would be if it were developed property. So that's a consideration maybe for you all to think about as well.
I also have another consideration, perhaps if you would reach out to Temple. I know they have new leadership or whatever. Maybe perhaps they would negotiate maybe even cheaper than the $650 what we're paying for a gravel lot if we would increase what we pay them and get the blacktop parking that is right literally across the street. If this were to fall, maybe they were looking for some ways to make some extra funds for parking on their.
I have been talking to someone who is in a leadership position there, and he is someone that I had not talked with in the past, and he's been very gracious as far as wanting to offer the city more property to lease. We didn't talk specifically about the paved surface because they've always pretty much considered that off limits because they want that available if there's a wedding on a Saturday, if their congregation is meeting and there's a special event going on, they don't want to yield that to public. But I could ask. I mean, that certainly would be a consideration to take some of that money that we've been paying and ask them to allow us to put our public parking signs there. Right. And so I can do that for sure.
Thank you.
I will point out that if we vote this down, that closes this negotiation. That does not at all prevent them from going, wait a minute, on second thought, they could reopen a new negotiation with us if they wanted to come back with a different number than the 1,800, and Administrator Gracely can bring that number to us, and we can consider it at that time. So not a whole lot of difference between voting this up or down. They know where we are. So any further discussion?
Point of order. What are we voting for renegotiating of making a $1,000 official, or are we voting this up or down?
The motion is to direct City Administrator Gracely to communicate to the owner that $1,000 per month is our best offer.
It's on the table. Okay, thank you.
Point of order.
Councilmember Roche.
But it should also be said that she's already done that, and their attorney said no. So
I don't know if the words best offer were used, but I don't know if that really makes a whole lot of difference either.
He posed some arguments back to me. They weren't valid arguments. In fact, I had shared with him what we were leasing our building for on the corner here, the former library building, which is not much more than they're asking for a gravel lot. And we have a building that we're leasing. And he didn't seem to think that the value was the same, thinking theirs was more. So I don't think he's being reasonable. And maybe if the family realizes this is, in fact, our best offer, that's money for doing nothing, basically. And if they don't want to accept the offer, then it means they get zero. And, I don't know what their response is going to be to that. Like I said, the only thing, if council would want me to go back and accommodate for the taxes that they do have to pay on that property. That would be the only difference between the value that we get out of the Temple lot and the value we get out of their lot.
Okay. Any further discussion? On the motion to direct City Administrator Gracely to communicate to the owner that $1,000 per month is our best offer, all those in favor signify by saying yes.
Yes.
All those opposed signify by saying no.
No.
So I hear 2 council members voting no, Councilmember O'Rear and Mayor Shoemaker.
That's enough for me.
Yep. So that vote passes by a vote of 4-2.
And that is O'Rear and Shoemaker opposed?
Rear and Shoemaker, yes. All right. That completes item 6G. 6H, Election Commission appointments. Administrator Gracely, will you summarize, please?
Mayor. At the last committee of the whole, I presented in my administrator's report that you would be considering appointments for the election commission. There are 2 openings for expired terms, and you have 4 applicants. And we have tried to provide information that was given to us by the applicants about why they were interested in serving. I know, Mayor Shoemaker, you indicated to me earlier that you know personally one of the applicants. I will say that this role, while very important, is not a substantial obligation of time. It's basically just to certify the results of the election. They typically go down to the county election office to do that, only after city elections. So that would be, once every 2 years that they would have to go and do that.
Okay, thank you, Administrator Gracely. All right, Council, let me walk you through how this is going to work. We have 4 candidates for 2 positions. Each council member, you have ballots in front of you that are numbered, round 1, round 2, et cetera. And they're prepared with your name and the number of blanks corresponding to the number of openings, plus a place to sign your ballot before it's tallied. You must vote for 2 candidates, not 3, not 1. You must vote for 2 candidates, and then we will pass those down to the clerk and city administrator for the count. So at this time, if you would please choose your 2 candidates and sign your ballot marked round 1 and pass them down to the clerk. Now, while these votes are being tallied, I will explain that it takes 4 votes. I'm sorry. Yes, that's correct. Well, since we have 6, the majority is still 4. It takes a majority of council to appoint these commissioners. So it will take 4 positive votes for a candidate to be selected. I didn't know she was applying.
In this case, it would certainly be subject.
Are you doing the first ones? I'm doing. I mean, all of them have. Okay, how many does Taylor have?
So, Mayor, it appears that there are 2 candidates that each have 3 votes.
Okay, which ones?
And that would be Camille Schramm and is it
These 3 got 2 votes.
Schramm.
There should be a total of 12 votes. Six council members times 2 votes is 12 names.
No, that's not Schramm. That's Shaw. So it's Schramm, has 3. Whitmire, 4. Okay, so candidate Sherry Whitmire has 4, and candidate Schramm has 3, and the others have either 1 or 2 votes.
Okay, so Camille Schramm has 3, Sherry Whitmire has 4. Which one of the ones had 1 vote? Oh, well, I'm sorry. We're still only up to 7. We should have 5 more votes somewhere.
So 2, and no, wait.
Okay. Can you look at those pieces of paper and tell me how many times Alice Watts' name shows up?
1, twice.
2 for Alice Watts. How many times does Taylor Shaw Loisel show up?
2. 2.
2. And Camille Schramm?
3.
3. And Sherry Whitmire?
4.
So that's only 11 votes.
Okay.
Did somebody only vote once?
I'm having a hard time with that's. Is that Whitmire? Okay, so Whitmire has 5.
Whitmire has 5.
I was having a hard time reading.
Good. Now, okay. Now.
It was you.
Now that we have arrived at that, Sherry Whitmire has been appointed to the Election Commission. So we have, at this point, we need to eliminate the lowest vote getter, but we don't have a single lowest vote getter. So I need you to find your ballot that is marked round 2. And you are voting for either, oops, clicked the wrong thing here. Let me back up, fix this. Round 2, unless you shuffled it or somebody else has your thing. All right, let me do this again. Sherry Whitmire is selected. Now, that leaves Alice Watts and Taylor Shaw Loisel as the lowest vote getters, but they are tied. So you're going to vote for 1 candidate. Okay, so if you would check the box, vote for 1, and write your choice. And sign it and pass it down. We are voting for who gets to stay in and run against Camille.
Schramm. Mayor,
Mm-hmm.
you eliminated Schramm.
No, she's going to go in the next round. She's in for the next round.
Okay, I was
We're just
looking at
determining who's getting kicked out.
I was looking at the board,
Yeah.
and you don't have her on the board.
Yeah. But they can't vote for her. She's going to the next round. She's already in.
Oh, you're doing a round, and then
We're trying to decide who remains in between Watts
Gotcha.
and Shaw Loisel.
Yeah.
Make sure you have 6 ballots there. We have 1 more coming.
Yep, coming.
First name. So Alice Watts will be going to the next round by a vote of 5-1.
Okay, how many votes did she have?
5.
5, and Loisel had 2?
1.
1, I'm sorry, yeah, it does need to total up to 6. All right, find your ballot marked round 3 while I reset the screen here. Taylor has been eliminated. Ms. Whitmire is already in. Now, mark your box. You're voting for 1 and choose between Watts or Schramm.
It's too much. I'll have you here to try to figure out.
I'm ready. I'm ready.
Mayor, by a vote of 4-2, council has elected to appoint Camille Schramm.
Thank you, Administrator Gracely. Our successful candidates for the Election Commission and our new election commissioners are Camille Schramm and Sherry Whitmire. Congratulations to the two of them. If there are no objections, we will stand adjourned.